Okay, I'm going to cover the rest of the 3.5, 3.3, and 3.2 stuff here. In problem 19, we want to solve each equation. If I get everything onto the left, x squared minus 8x plus 12 equals 0. And that's going to factor nicely for me as x minus 6 times x minus 2. X is equal to 6 or x is equal to 2 would be the two answers. Okay, part B, 3x squared minus 15x minus 42 equals 0. So 3 is in common to these three terms here on the left. I can divide by 3, and it gives me x squared minus 5x minus 14 times 3 is 42 equals 0. So this is going to factor nicely as x minus 7 times x plus 2. X is equal to 7 or x is equal to negative 2 would be the two answers there. Problem or part C, 9x squared minus 49 equals 0. That factors as the difference of two squares. We got x plus 7 times x minus 7 equals 0. X is equal to negative 7 and x is equal to 7 are the two answers. Okay, so that problem it works fine for. How about part D? X squared minus 50 equals 0. Well, part D is you're not going to easily see the factors like you did when it was 49. If I solve this a different way, x squared equals 50. Then take the square root of both sides. X is equal to plus or minus the square root of 50. And the square root of 50 breaks down nicely as root 25 times root 2. Root 25 is 5, root 2. So plus or minus 5 root 2 are the two answers there. Okay. The next one, x minus 5 squared minus 18 equals 18 is, when I take the square root of both sides, x minus 5 equals plus or minus 18. Add 5 to both sides. Root 18 breaks down nicely as root 9 times root 2. Root 9 is 3, so 3 root 2. 5 plus or minus 3 root 2 would be my two answers there. And I'm using the square root property, and I guess that'd be my best option there. Leave the answer in exact form for me also. Don't give these in decimal form, otherwise you'll have to round to a certain spot, and there's no direction about that. 3x plus 1 squared equals negative 20. 3x plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of negative 20. Well, the square root of negative 20 is I root 20. If I subtract 1 from both sides and then divide by 3, root 20 breaks down as 2 root 5. So negative 1 plus or minus 2i root 5 all over 3. Okay? And that would be the best way to do this problem. And again, leave the answers in exact form for me is good. Problem 20, solve each equation by completing the square. So step 1 is to get a 1 in front of x squared. Step 2 is to add the constant over to the right. Okay, I've already got the 1 in front of x squared there. So x squared minus 5x equals 8. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take half of the coefficient in front of x squared. So negative 5 halves squared gives me 25 fourths. Okay, so I want to add 25/4 to both sides. When I do that, 8 is the same as 32 divided by 4. 32 plus 25 is 57 divided by 4. Now over here, x squared minus 5x plus 25/4, that's going to factor nicely as x minus 5 halves times x minus 5 halves, or x minus 5 halves squared. And by the way, notice that when I take half of the number in front of x before squaring it, I get negative 5 halves. That will always happen. That will always happen whenever you factor after completing the square. So x minus 5 halves squared equals 57 over 4. Take the square root of both sides. X minus 5 halves equals plus or minus the square root of 57 over 4. Square root of 4 is 2. And if I add 5 halves to both sides, x equals 5 halves plus or minus the square root of 57 halves, or 5 plus or minus the square root of 57 over 2. Okay, now this would not be a problem that I'd want to factor. Okay, although it would be easy to check, these are the nasty factors, and these are not natural numbers that you'd be guessing and checking. The next one, 3x squared minus 4x minus 1 equals 0. Okay, well, if I subtract, or if I divide by 3, x squared minus 4/3 x minus 1/3 equals 0. Add 1/3 to both sides. X squared minus 4/3 x equals 1/3. Okay, now I haven't done any completing the square yet. Now I'm all set to complete the square. So I need half of the number in front of x squared. Half of negative 4/3 gives me negative 2/3. And negative 2/3 squared gives me 4/9. So 4/9 is the number that I need to add to both sides on the next line there. 1/3 plus 4/9 is the same as, 3/9 plus 4/9, that's 7/9. Over here, x squared minus 4/3 x plus 4/9 factors, and the factors are the same. That will always happen. That will always happen, by the way. Whenever you're squaring the number, you're going to take half of the number in front of x squared, or basically half the number in front of x. So x minus 2/3, negative 2/3 times negative 2/3 is 4/9. So x minus 2/3 times x minus 2/3 gives me 7/9. X minus 2/3 equals plus or minus the square root of 7/9. The square root of 7 divided by the square root of 3, or the square root of 9 is 3. If I add 2/3 to both sides, x equals 2/3 plus or minus the square root of 7/3. So 2 plus or minus the square root of 7 over 3. And again, these are not natural numbers that I'd be guessing and checking. You know, basically the way to do this problem, if you don't use the quadratic formula, is to complete the square. Okay. Problem 21, solve each equation by using the quadratic formula. Part A, 3x squared minus 5x plus 1 equals 0. Okay, I'm using the quadratic formula, so the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a is the formula that I'm using. The opposite of b is 5 plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 5 squared is 25, minus 4 times a is 3, times c is 1, all over 2a, 2 times 3 is 6. in the denominator. So I get 5 plus or minus the square root of 13 all over 6. And this would be probably the best way to do this problem. You know, this isn't going to factor nicely for me, since these nasty numbers here are the part of the factors. Okay. Part B. Let me get everything on the left side. You get 2x squared minus 3x plus 5 equals 0. Okay, and again, I want the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So the opposite of b is 3 plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, minus 4 times a is 2, times c is 5, all over 2a. 2 times 2 is 4. By the way, one thing to mention here, regardless of b squared will always be a positive number. Okay, because when you square a negative, you get a positive. 9 minus, let's see here, 9 minus 40 is negative 31. The square root of negative 31 in terms of I would be I root 31. So 3 plus or minus I root 31 over 4 is the answer. Okay, of course this isn't going to factor nicely. These nasty numbers here are the factors. Okay, in this section 3.2 we learned about factoring and completing the square, which is right here, the quadratic formula, and factoring by the square root property. Okay, so those are the 4 techniques to know, and that's it with this section there. So, okay.